Some people inform me that I have contracted a bit of the tard, and I need to turn to this galaxy brain authority to correct my tardism. Within the first minute of his video, I can say with quite certainty the galaxy encompassed by his brain is a dark galaxy of nothing but interstellar gas. Not a neuron to be found. Also, to preempt this, I did not remove your messages. Your messages were removed by YouTube. They are not removed, they're still there. They are not listed in my held comments. They are not listed in the actual comment section of the video, but they are listed as currently active comments on the video in my studio. That's on YouTube. I have the held comment set to 0. I manually removed the bots. That's take it up with them, not me. But let's dive straight into it.
In any second now. So look, do you guys remember this? Liberation Day. Donald Trump came out and unilaterally imposed tariffs on basically every nation on Earth. It turns out...
Yes, all like 30 or 40 nations on Earth.
That our system, our constitutional system, is pretty clear that he does not, as the executive power, the president, have the power to do that. We do have...
Our constitutional system is fairly clear that he does in fact have the power to do that. From the foundation of the US in the end of the 1700s to the beginning of the 1900s, barring the Civil War, for the entire 1800s, the government was entirely funded by tariffs. Zero income tax, again, other than the Civil War, where it was income tax was enabled as an emergency power in order to fund the country through the Civil War because they had lost more than half of their export economy. Meaning, well, import economy, but their import income from tariffs. Throughout that entire period, the president would regularly, through executive order, enact tariffs. Congress could challenge these and knock them down, but they in fact did have the unrestricted authority.
A thing called the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, which was written in 1977, which allows the president to have some leeway over certain things with regards to sanctions and asset freezes. But it's like small scale.
Small scale. Trillions of dollars seized. Not taxed, seized. Entire ships seized. Entire oil refineries seized. Small things.
And that hadn't been used for 50 years. And then out of nowhere in April, Trump pulled it out to say, we are in an emergency situation with every nation on Earth. Are we really in an emergency with France? Are we in an emergency with some island in South? Are we in an emergency with every nation? Is it an emergency? And he would say, yes, it was all because of drug smuggling and trade deficits, and every nation there was an emergency. So
every nation we're in an emergency with. Well, the specific nations that he listed, and he combated their existing tariffs on the US, one might say we are in a bit of an issue with them. If I may. No, not that one. This one. I think I see a bit of an issue here. Now, back in the 1930s, the government also agreed that we were in a bit of an emergency issue. The US dollar had recently lost over 50% of its value, I believe. I'm not sure. No, it looks like it just barely hit 50% in this graph. I believe it dropped below 50%. This graph is a little inaccurate in that regard. And in response to this, over the next couple of years, at specifically 1933, I believe, the federal government decided it was such a big emergency that through executive order they abolished capitalism. And I mean they literally abolished capitalism. The president signed into effect a banning of the private ownership of gold, forced all individuals that held gold to sell it to the state. Now, you were forced to sell it to the state at $20 per ounce. At the time, on the private market, it was worth over $200 per ounce of gold because the US dollar had sort of crumbled in its value to nothing. Now, during this time, the state took all of that gold, and if you did not give them their gold, yes, their gold, not your gold, our gold, and by our, I mean theirs, then you would be fined. The initial fine was, I believe, 30% of the value of your gold at that $20 conversion. And over the course of the period of time you did not comply, it was elevated to 100%, at which point you would be imprisoned until they got the gold they totally knew you had somewhere. You would be imprisoned indefinitely, or until the 70s when this was finally ended, unless your gold was turned over. At the same time, you notice how there's this sudden little spike when they started taking the gold, right? And then it immediately collapses down. Well, the state took the gold and they also said, well, we don't have enough gold yet. But we know we're going to get the gold from the people eventually, and we know that the public must have hundreds of times more gold than we have. So the fiat system was invented, where, I mean, it wasn't really invented, but it was instated. It's a system that's very old, where they would print hundreds of dollars for $1 worth of gold that they currently had in their possession. Now, they started out specifically printing $35 for every $20 worth of gold that they had, according to their own statement of the value of gold. Now, that was still significantly under the market value of gold, but they very quickly just said, okay, well, with fiat printing, we can print against the gold we're going to collect from the people, and they just started mass printing money to buy their way out of the Great Depression with printed money. And as you can see, that worked out phenomenally. They bought their way out of the Great Depression into the Greater Depression. We'll call it the Greater Recession, which leads into the Greatest Depression, where the US dollar is worth an infinitesimal amount of a single US dollar of the past. An important thing to note is for the 1800s, the reason they're not included in any of these graphs is because for that entire period of time, the US dollar fluctuated between 80 cents and $1.2. So $1.20. And it never really fluctuated to any extreme. That was the most extreme it fluctuated. Because by dictating the economic power of the state through tariffs, you maintained local production naturally. And as long as you produce goods locally and you export some goods, as you can see on the other graph, the value of your currency goes up when you export lots of goods, and it goes down when you import lots of goods. You know, some people might consider this to be a bit of an emergency, but let's let them continue. I'm sure
As
he'll cover
of
this.
today, they finally struck that down. And I thought it was pretty interesting because this is the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is 6-3 Republican, majority Republican. And in fact,
Zoolander, please open your school for adults who would like to read good. Nominated by a Republican president. The entire reason the Supreme Court has any authority is because they take an oath of neutrality. They take an oath to only rule based on the letter of the Constitution. They are not appointed based on party affiliation, they are appointed on past history on judges, or past history as judges. They have been serving the court for a long period of time where they are supposed to act with neutrality. Now, we know that modern judges are not neutral, but we like to pretend that these ones are. If you decide that they are all Republican or Democrat, the entire Supreme Court has no reason to exist.
three of them were appointed by Trump himself. Neil, Amy, and Brett here. So when the
So I take it that his position is that those three judges are ordained to obey Trump at all times because he personally handpicked them and appointed them. I'm sure that that's exactly what they did. I'd already seen the voting pattern, so
vote today
let's be surprised
came
together
6-3
now.
against Trump, who do you think voted for Trump? Who do you think was on his side? Well, you're probably wrong. Because it wasn't these guys. I mean, it was one of them. But in fact, two of them voted.
Wait, are you saying that two of the appointed justices maintained some degree of neutrality, according to you, and voted against their appointer? Well, they're not very good Republicans, are they? They're not very good puppets. They're not very good, whatever you want to call them. It's almost like your previous claim is bullshit.
Against the tariffs. These were the three who voted to keep the tariffs. What's interesting is, even in their dissenting opinion, they basically said, yeah, these tariffs are illegal, but boy, it's going to be a pain.
They did not say that at all in their dissenting opinion. The specific justice he referenced there, his dissenting opinion was that he fully disagreed with the court's decision that these tariffs were not covered by EPA, and said that I don't know the exact wording off the top of my head, but basically he said that it won't matter because it does not meaningfully constrain the presidential authority to issue tariffs, and that Trump would simply have to utilize one of the many other acts that grant him tariffing power, as the Tariff Act of 1930 allows the sitting president within limits to adjust tariff rates based on the recommendation of the U.S. Tariffs Commission. Now, that is pretty limited. He wouldn't want to use that one, but it's okay. The Trade Expansion Act of 1962 allows the president to impose tariffs and other trade restrictions for any nation that is found to be threatening the U.S. national security. The economy is, in fact, part of the U.S.'s national security. The reason this tariff power was added was because the industries in the U.S. were being harmed by foreign goods being imported rather than locally produced. It was literally to counter exactly importing. Very good case to use this tariff, but it gets better. The Trade Act of 1974 safeguard tariffs in a surge in importing that seriously injures domestic industries. Now, this again allows the president to impose tariffs in response to unfair trade practices by foreign countries, like, for example, this right here. Or, if we use his own video, this right here. You see this? Vietnam putting a 90% tariff on the US, and the US previously had a 0% tariff? Well, they came together in the middle, and Vietnam dropped their tariff to 46%, and the US has a 46% tariff. Everyone wins. Equal tariffs on both sides. This is what we would consider a 90-0 to be a unfair trade practice under every interpretation of that ruling. So if he wants to go through that act, he can. The key thing is, if he goes through that act, then it could, and most likely will, trigger a WTO investigation, World Trade Organization, and then they will look at it, and if they rule with any type of non-biased factual ruling, they will say, well, Vietnam has maintained a 90% tariff on the USA for decades. I don't know exactly how long, but I know it's been a very long time. And this is unfair. So not only are we going to support the USA's reciprocal tariff policy, we're also going to be punitive towards Vietnam and force them to reinvest into other economies to balance out their trade deficit. Meaning they will then be forced to import things they don't want. Remember when China was forced to import a bunch of rice from the USA? Exactly that. And they will be not very happy about that, which means they will be less receptive to negotiations about lowering tariffs. Let us continue.
boy, it's going to be a pain. Like the dissent, again, I haven't gone through the full dissent, but basically they're like, we really can't be fucking around with the after this long. So
Basically, they in no way said any of that.
like everybody basically agrees the Constitution is so.
Everybody basically does not agree. Here's what I have to say about the Supreme Court justices in this ruling. They are going to get fabulously wealthy, they and their peers. Everyone was so much in agreement that these tariffs were justified that all of the affected companies were in mass selling off their potential victory in court, the returns from the tariffs they've been wrongfully affected by, for 10 cents on the dollar. If you gave them $1 million, you will get $10 million if that court case wins. They were betting against themselves for cash now. And the people who were buying that were shadowy people through organizations that are leveraging private investors to buy this stake in these court cases. People that probably had a way to know that these specific tariffs would be overturned, like some Supreme Court justices that would be able to vote to overturn them, effectively vote to overturn them. Now, yes, that is just hearsay. There's no evidence for that, except for the fact that all of these Supreme Court justices have much more money to their name than their public salaries would explain. They have peers who do extremely well on the market. These are things that don't really happen without insider trading.
Clear. And again, I know everybody here fell asleep or was on their phone during civics class. So very briefly, we got three branches of power in America. We got the executive, we got the legislative, and we got the judicial. It's supposed to be kind of balanced, checks and balances. This is Trump, this is Congress, and this is the Supreme Court.
You notice how there's arrows pointing in both ways, which are demonstrating that these organizations all interoperate with each other. They have overlapping authorities, and the executive orders can be used, then Congress can challenge them and block them. Not really block them. It would be blocking if the legislatures block them, or Congress can clarify or amend the Constitution through referendum. And they can go through and, with a 70% majority, vote to add an amendment to the Constitution that prevents an executive order from being effective, which will then cause the judicial to overturn it, and it will not be able to happen again. If the judicial overturns it, it means it's already against the Constitution, allegedly. Now, their decision in this case was specifically that tariffs are not a form of sanction. Tariffs are not a form of sanction. Throughout all of human history, from every organized society, tariffs have been a form of sanction. This is entirely nonsense. In the USA, tariffs have been used openly as a form of sanction since the beginning of the USA until they stopped being used in the early 90s, and even then they still get used occasionally as a sanction.
And they kind of balance each other out. And the idea in the Constitution is that they have certain powers that are unique to each one. Specific.
The powers are not unique to each one. The legislature has to confirm a declaration of war. The president can, through executive order, declare a war. Now, the triggering effects of those things differ. The president can also veto the legislature's declaration of war. Now, I don't think that's actually happened in history. Maybe during the Civil War, because basically the South declared war, and then the federal government just said, no, you're still our slave state, and you will obey us, and we're not at war until Fort Sumter.
Congress has the power.
Notice how it does not say unique power, as he added that unique in there himself.
To do taxes, duties, imposts, and excises. Tariffs!
Also, let's be clear. The IRS collects taxes. If they have the unique ability to collect taxes, why then does the IRS collect taxes? The IRS has none of this other power. It is not an extension of the Congress. It is just a separate federal organization that has the power of Congress that is unique to Congress. The man is retarded. Let us continue.
Congress has this one. Like, this one is so direct. Now, there's like small rules that have been written over the years that give like little bits and pieces to other sections. But what they lay down in today's ruling, in today's 6-3 Supreme Court ruling, is basically what's called like the major questions doctrine, which says if something is
No, the major questions doctrine is just gobbledygook from CNN and other talking heads. The Supreme Court does not rule based on risk. They rule based on, I mean, technically they hear a case based on risk, but they do not rule based on risk. They rule based on the Constitution. That is all they exist to do. They are not there to legislate. They are not there to reform the Constitution. They are there to translate and interpret the Constitution and the amendments. In this case, they have decided that tariffs are not sanctions, which goes against language, it goes against legal precedent, it goes against history. So we're just going to go ahead and skip through the gobbledygook.
otherwise, Congress doesn't even matter. Trump's about to speak in a
Correct.
second. We're going to see what I have to say. That's the major catch up. What is interesting is that this leads to a lot of refunds. There are thousands of companies
I already covered this. This is the. Well, let's see. Let's see if
in
he's honest.
line who have already sued prior to this rule. Thousands of companies,
Okay.
big and small. I'm showing the big ones. I do think
Okay.
Trump's going to find loopholes to try and keep the tariffs active, at least through the midterms. These companies, based on the tariffs they already paid. I'm not 100%. So I'm going to call him from now on because he lied about hanging out with Epstein. And Howard Lutnick's family of his firm Cantor Fitzgerald has been buying up this tariff debt nonstop.
You really don't want to admit this, that all of the legal experts of all these companies were telling their owners, we can't win this, the tariffs are constitutional, quickly sell off the debt. And then after the debt was bought, not just by his firm, by many firms, after the debt was in the hands of the elite, of the powerful, of the people very closely connected, according to you, very closely connected to the Supreme Court, then the Supreme Court made a ruling that could potentially give billions to their friends and themselves. Imagine that.
For
Imagine
months.
that.
Basically, they would go to a company and say, cash payment now. But it's just insane, bro. Anyway, Act. Some of the tariffs were imposed under different acts, like the ones on China, the ones on aluminum, the ones on steel. And he
Okay, so he now knows that the president has the authority to impose tariffs. Just a minute ago, that authority exclusively belonged to Congress, and now it belongs to the president. Make up your mind, sir.
he's going to try and force some of the other tariffs into those buckets, but they'll of the pen, which is what he's been doing. So again, it's going to get messy on with like a single stroke of the pen, which is what he's been doing. So again, it's going to get messy.
Those different policies are done with a single stroke of a pen. Yes, it's that simple. Only the 1930s one required oversight. The rest of them are executive powers.
It's just going to get
We're
really
wrong
messy.
again.
Wow.
Oh, he's
A
here.
lot of people. A new record. We set a ruling on absolutely ashamed and congratulate those justices in Congress. They're an automatic no. They're very unpatriotic and disloyal to our aid by foreign interests.
I'm so sorry. I'm going to freak out. They're not disloyal to the Constitution, bro. Their Constitution is so specific. It's so fucking
Now, we're going
specific.
to the
Congress
once
shall
again.
have power to do
Okay.
tariffs.
5 of the 8 wars that I said, Pakistan, big ones, nuclear, could have been nuclear.
It says the same
Great
5
meeting
lines.
that we had. But
Talk
they've
about the
given
tariffs. That's what
us
this-
great national security, these tariffs have.
He literally said that he solved 5 of the 8 wars he solved. I believe it was 5 of the 8 wars with the tariffs. And now you're asking him to talk about the tariff. Oh, are you retarded? I'm asking a rhetorical question, of course. Of course you are.
And together with our strong borders,
Hey, bro. Woo! Dude, give me Mitt Romney. Give me anyone. I just can't do it. We can't do this for 4-1, dude.
Hold
Give
on.
me Mitt Romney. Give me Woo! Dude, we're through the looking glass, bro. Dude, I'll take anyone. Please, God, I'll take anyone. Give me fucking anyone, dude. Give me Mitt Romney. Give me anyone. I just can't do it. We can't do this for 4 years, bro.
Our Constitution is actually very clear on this particular issue. You do not get to supersede the will of the people because you can't do this anymore. Popular vote, electoral college, president of the United States. You don't get to just vibe your way into getting someone else in the office, buddy. The Constitution is actually airtight on that one.
A handshake deal. Just put someone else in this fucking spot at least for the next 3 years. This is crazy. He does not even talking about the tariffs. That's the big decision of the day.
He literally cited what the tariffs were doing. You absolute clown.
Hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs got struck down. You're talking about fucking the Dow.
can't charge $1 to any.
He didn't say anything about the Dow. He said wars were won. Well, not really won. Were avoided with the tariffs. That's not the Dow. That is global stability.
Country under IEPA. Not $1. Those are the.
No! It's to make you go through Congress. That's what. It's because it's not your power.
Okay, we've already covered this. It is in fact his power. At no point in the decision do they say to go through Congress. They actually just recommend to use the other forces, which, again, basically take the gloves off when dealing with other nations and have a less courteous negotiation.
You don't get to just do it. Tariff on every single country.
Pose a foreign country to charge $1. Anything I want to.
Elections, but he said Trump, as like the tide is turning against him, it's kind of like a scorpion in the corner. You know, he almost gets more dangerous the less power he has, and the more things turn against him. It's crazy. I mean, he's just like lashing out.
A scorpion in the corner. And I don't know, I guess his knowledge of insects is also fairly limited. Scorpions have fairly low spatial awareness, and they are not particularly passive when not cornered. They are predators. They are likely to sting you regardless of where they're at. I mean, they technically will flee a human, but, like, if you were to touch them, you will get stung, corner or no. He's most likely citing the fable of the scorpion and the frog, which the scorpion asks the frog to ferry him across the river, and the frog says, "No, you'll sting me and I'll die." And the scorpion says, "Well, no, I'll drown too, so I won't do that." And then the frog agrees, and then he stings him, and then they both die. So the moral of that fable has nothing to do with cornering the frog or scorpion. It has to do with not trusting people who will stab you in the back. In this case, this man, will be the scorpion because he is misleading his audience aggressively based on his own political ideology. Not about interpreting things in the way that favor his political ideology, outright rejecting the things that just, the reality that does not favor his ideology. I believe what he was trying to say is specifically, when you corner a prey animal, it becomes more dangerous. If you corner a predator, it's not really much different. It will attack you. It's a predator. If you corner a prey animal, it will go from trying to flee to attacking you because that's the only option left. That's what that reference usually is aimed at. They usually simplify it to cornering an animal, but it's specifically cornering a prey animal. And I don't know what cornering he's talking about because Trump pretty well has not lost any power. He had a minor setback that forced him to take off the gloves and potentially embargo or enact World Trade Organization intervention after already negotiating his trade policies, which is just bad news for everyone involved because we had already stabilized the trade, and tariffs were equalized on both parties. I don't know in what world you consider equal tariffs to be bad unless you just really, really like this. You want to continue this for longer. You want to hollow out the entire country until your children all just starve to death. Most people want to leave their children a future. He apparently does
It's like
not.
so ridiculous. We have the president of this fucking 300 million person country talking about destroying. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's getting
Oh, hey, someone else actually got the frog reference, even though it was completely raped. Utterly.
absurd.
Think of that. How ridiculous is that? I'm allowed to embargo them. I'm allowed to tell them you can't do business in the United States. If I want to charge them $10,
Duties, imposts, and excises. It's not.
I can't do that.
He's saying it's incomprehensible. I just want to remind. So specific.
Okay,
Embargo, that would be like an act of
we're doing
war.
this
Or
again.
two, you couldn't. If there was an
Wait,
embargo,
wait.
that would be like an act of war. That would be.
Okay. Another retard point. Woo! Okay, so an act of war. No, embargoes are preventative measures to avoid war. Once war is declared, embargoes are useless. During the declaration of a war, all trade is made illegal with the enemy. For the fact that you can't trust the goods or vessels delivering the goods from that country to not attack you because you're at war with them, and two, because you don't want to fuel their economy when economics is a major part of warfare. Now, bilateral embargoes, where you force your allies to also embargo a nation, even if they're neutral in the war, that is a thing, but we're talking about embargoes here. An embargo would be like if you're feeling like you might possibly have a enemy nation that is ramping up to go to war with you, and then you go, okay, well, we're going to embargo them, cripple their economy, and they won't be able to afford to attack us. That's what embargoes are for. Well, I mean, they're also a negotiation tactic. They are for dealing with unfair trade practices. Like if a country is just hollowing out your economy, you put an embargo on them, and then your country just has to adapt. It's a very extreme method to achieve the same goal. And let's be clear, some might say extreme measures are justified based on the value of the US dollar over time. By the way, I haven't really cited it, but this other graph is the US imports from China versus China's currency. And you notice how when the US imports a lot of goods from China, China's currency very quickly grows to match that. Because, the US has to buy the Chinese currency, and the Chinese know that they need the Chinese currency to do their imports, so they're able to just hike up the price to match the demand. Supply-demand issue.
And that's, of course, would be under the president. So it's not crazy that you could do that.
Congress must vote to declare a war. The president can react to an attack and declare an emergency state and start the declaration of war and respond just for the, obvious promptness of a defense or retaliation. But in order to declare a war without any attack, Congress has to do that. It's like the powers are split between the different areas based on context. I mean, technically, the president can declare a war on their own, but, it hasn't really happened in the US, to my knowledge. Now, I'm not super well-researched in that regard, but basically just employ common sense.
Like if we were at war with Germany in World War II, you could embargo them, but you could not tariff them because that.
You, in fact, could not embargo them, and actually the U.S. was maintaining trade with Germany throughout the war until the U.S. joined the war, at which point no embargo was issued, yet the U.S. cut all trade to Germany because they were now an enemy combatant.
That's under Congress!
That example.
Our country is.
That was not done under Congress. That was done under the Presidential Declaration of War. I mean, Congress most likely supported that declaration, but it was a presidential declaration.
Is the hottest country anywhere in the world right now.
Just give me one Biden mention.
And it was. Now I'm going to go. Should have gone very good at reading language and stronger than our original two. wrote in holding today the
And I've only done research for today, so let me give you the baseline. There are others that.
Oh, he's only done research for today. Are you shocked? I mean, he hasn't been able to string a coherent thought that doesn't contradict his own past statements in the same video, but he's only done research for today, guys. Very bad at doing research if he's researched for a day. This is more like you asked ChatGPT to tell you what's going on, and then you just read whatever it told you. That's disrespectful to ChatGPT, because even that would be more consistent.
Statutes, currently the ones that are done for the China tariffs, the aluminum tariffs, the steel tariffs, and a few others that are through different laws than IEPA. And he can try to move all the tariffs into those. But those are harder to do, require individual comment and review periods with other branches of government. It takes a while.
That is incorrect. Only the 1930s, and that one hasn't really been used since, the expansion of presidential tariffing power with the other acts.
So maybe you'll try to skip all of that and unilaterally impose it. I'm not sure. But it could be this is just bluster. This is clearly a loss of power. There's no world where this is, oh my God, I have.
It is not a loss of power. It is taking off his gloves and telling him he has to just go in bare knuckle with the other nations. And the people who suffer the consequences of that are us, the citizens.
More power than I ever thought. It doesn't
constrain a president's ability to order tariffs going forward. Federal statute.
The quarter before this last one was pretty good. It was a surprisingly good GDP print, and everyone was. And it turns out that the tariffs, and now the tariffs are impacting and doing quite a poor job on the economy. So realistically,
the impact of the tariff is always going to be negative because we are here in 2020, well, technically in 2026, but you get my point. We are in the bottom of the slope, and we need to now climb our ass back up into a functional economy. The climbing process is difficult. It's painful. It takes a lot of effort. It's really easy to coast downhill and kick the can down the road. You go ahead and say, well, it doesn't matter if my children starve to death in 30 years, I'll be dead by then. But, the children kind of do care, hence why Trump has so much support in this. The young voters are the ones that are overwhelmingly supporting Trump right now, because they're the ones that see that they have no future under the current status quo, and whatever it takes to break the current status quo is worth it.
Removing the tariffs might actually be fucking good for this guy going into the midterms because they are just a drag on the economy. There's been no evidence at all that tariffs have done anything positive for the economy. They haven't brought manufacturing jobs.
No evidence at all that tariffs do something positive for the economy. China had large tariffs on the USA during this period, and look at their economy. We had low tariffs on China during that same period, and look at our economy. It seems like there's something that's happening here. I don't know. I guess we'll have to get an expert in here to look at it. It's almost like it's common sense that if you import all of your goods, you have to spend money in other countries. When you spend money in other countries, those countries reinvest that money into your country. They don't reinvest it for the betterment. They reinvest it for buying out your production, buying out your land, buying out everything that's valuable in your country and taking it away. There's a reason China owns a huge chunk of our farmland, because they have a huge chunk of our money. And they're going to buy something that will actually hold its value.
They've increased prices. 90% has been paid for by Americans. Like, theoretically, he should just talk his shit and be like, oh, well, we're going to bring it back, but then not do anything. Because the only way that
this man clearly has no clue what the mindset of people that actually support Trump is. The mindset of the average Trump supporter is the intense hatred of the nothing ever happens status quo. They want something to happen. They don't care if the entire country burns down immediately because it's at least better than dragging it out for 30 years and then sacrificing their children to the country. They would rather everything crash and burn now and build back up from the debris than to just continue the slow coast into destruction. There's no point to continue to burn yourself slowly when it's going to kill you eventually, as opposed to jumping through the flames and hoping for the best.
He can try to help himself out going into the midterms is to not have these tariffs go up.
Think of that. Those statutes include, for example, the Trade Expansion 2, Section 2.
I mean,
The
Tariffs
actually,
go up.
Think of that.
let's go ahead.
Those statutes include, for example, the Trade Expansion Act of 1962, Section 232. All of these things I know so well. The Trade Act.
Next time, if some of you are in,
I mean, considering you denied these acts existed less than 10 minutes ago, you probably shouldn't be laughing at someone saying they understand the acts.
just reading directly off of it,
While I am sure that they did not mean to do so, the Supreme Court's decision.
I was hoping he would read the other acts. I mean, I noticed he skipped over the 1930s Act, which is kind of a bad act to act on. The 1962 one is a solid one. The 1974 one is even stronger for what he wants to do. It also just comes with the negative of WTO investigation triggering. You are telling the World Trade Organization that this country has been acting inappropriately, and you are retaliating towards that. So, yeah. I feel like he's editing his. No, he is definitely editing the video because we didn't get the good boy quote, and the good boy quote should have been like right at the start, if I remember correctly.
Decision today made a president's ability to both regulate trade and impose tariffs more powerful
it did not
and
do
more crystal clear
that. It did not do that.
rather than less.
It, in fact, did do that. They simply stripped down the kitty gloves, and any president will now have to immediately go through the Unfair Trade Act and trigger WTO investigations, which will then carry additional penalties towards the nation that you are trying to equalize trade with. It will just be a much more aggressive collapse of whatever industry is affected. And that's what you need to happen. It's just he wanted to do it slowly so that the pain would be minimalized, and the new system that they're saying he has to go through is going to accelerate it dramatically.
I don't think they meant that. I'm sure they didn't. And to think
I think they 100% meant that because they're going to utilize that angle in order to know which stocks to buy, and not stocks. I mean, they're probably, doing stock trades as well because stocks are going to take an impact from this. But specifically, which tariff losses to buy. They were most likely very specific about which ones they were invested into because they knew what countries they were trading with, and they were just making sure that those countries are going to be the least likely to, and by least likely, they're going to specifically orchestrate those countries not having their tariffs resumed, which as long as the tariffs do not resume, then under past precedent, the companies will receive none of the tariff money back, as long as the tariffs remain at or above the amount that they were already being tariffed.
that the Democrats who oppose this only because they want to go the opposite way. They'd like to pack the court. They want to put on 21 people. They want to pack the court, pack the Supreme Court. Maybe they should do it. Maybe they would be better off if they did it. They want to pack the court. They want to do anything to hurt our country.
We just got to be so clear. I'm sorry to reiterate. The current Supreme Court is 6-3 Republican, including 3 people you appointed. The current court is packed in one.
If the court was packed, it would decide in alignment with the current power. You are arguing yourself that you are wrong. You are citing again the worst possible case you could cite about his appointees not siding with him, meaning they were acting with neutrality. Now, again, I don't trust that. I don't believe that is accurate defining of what is happening. I believe that they do have biases, and that the main bias they have is not towards party, it is towards personal enrichment. But the point you are trying to make is debunking your own claim as you try to make it. The court's already back, but they decided against you. That's not how court packing works. That's not how political affiliation works. If you believe that they are political operators, then they will operate in accordance to their political leader. It's that simple.
One direction towards you. It's 6 Republican. These 3 you appointed. 2 of them voted against you. It was overwhelming because this language is so clear. Because they have to follow the Constitution.
They don't have to follow the Constitution in this case. They have to follow the amendment. Well, it's not an amendment, the law. The law is very clear. They specifically take issue with qualifying tariffs as a sanction. That is what they specifically said in their decision, that tariffs are not a sanction, therefore they cannot be enacted under this power that only grants the power to sanction.
And the Constitution does not leave it so clear. But the Supreme Court shouldn't have justices that are part of a political party. The idea
No shit.
that we have red and blue justices in general is fucking stupid because that affects their judgment. It doesn't make any fucking sense.
So, to be clear to this poor soul, the justices are not appointed from political party. They are appointed from past judicial service. They are pulled from the judicial branch of the government. They have experience ruling on cases impartially. They take an oath to continue to rule impartially. They are appointed by either a Republican or Democrat, or technically third party, realistically Republican or Democrat. And then they are voted in by both parties through a confirmation process. If they are not successfully confirmed, then they have to find someone else. They have to look through the judicial to find someone. They have to find someone with the experience to actually support their confirmation process. They have to find someone that has a very low history of long-term biases in their judgment in order to be confirmed, because if they have any history of biases in their judgment, they can be blocked. They can also be shoved through. That has happened. You want to put people that have no bias. The only way you can do that is if you restart the forbidden experiment, raise a bunch of children in a white room with no human contact, and then they'll sit in there and deliberate by fervorously masturbating and flinging feces at each other until someone accidentally pen strokes a decision you can discern as your party's support or condemnation. You cannot strip people of bias. You're the most biased person I have seen, to the point where you will just reject reality in favor of your biases. And you're talking about having to have unbiased people in this position. Those people don't exist. The judiciaries are the closest thing you can get to those people that are not deranged nut jobs, because that's what happens when you strip people of bias. When you strip people of any ability to discern human behavior or history or knowledge, you get people that are cognitively broken forever. They can never be fixed. Those developmental years are vital. And during those years, you will develop biases.
If they have lifetime appointments, the idea that we're appointing different people from different parties is crazy. They shouldn't have parties. Their job is to read the Constitution and our
Your job is to read the goddamn paper you are citing where it says they were appointed by a Republican president. Because the president has to campaign to the people, which means he needs party support. You're taking issue that the president has a party. Not that they have parties. You are assigning parties to them, and they may have political leanings, but you are assigning parties to them based on a misreading of a basic sentence.
law in general, and then apply the law and make judgments where there's vague areas. That's their job. It shouldn't have anything to do with parties.
They do not judge on applying the law. They enforce constitutional foundations. Laws get created by Congress with the support of the other branches of government. And then, if people have an issue with those laws, they take those laws before the Supreme Court, if they can, appeal it all the way up. And then the Supreme Court will decide whether those laws operate in conjunction or against the Constitution. It's really not that complicated.
All national security tariffs under Section 230, 32, they're there, in effect. Under Section 301 and other countries.
And I'm not a fucking idiot. Here's what you could do. You can go, this is a disgrace. They instruct on the tariffs, and it's going to cause economic pain. And then, as the economy continues to get worse, first of all, you've blunted some of the damage because there's no tariffs, but it's still, the jobs numbers are going to get worse. You can go, well, it's the Supreme Court's fault. My stuff was working, but this.
He's right. He's actually right because he's retarded. If you do not reinstate the tariffs, the job numbers will, in fact, get worse. Because all those companies that are investing in domestic production will stop investing in domestic production. All of those construction jobs, poof. All of those future hirings to fill those facilities, poof. Yes, the jobs will get worse if you do not reinstate the tariffs. The economy will also get worse if you do not reinstate the tariffs. It'll just never get better. It'll get worse either way because, again, it's a painful climb back up from complete failure. It's a climb back the fuck up.
Supreme Court did it. You have something to blame. But instead, because you're putting another fucking 10% tariff globally, it's still all on you. Everyone knows it's all on you.
But just to end, so
Yes, people will know that he is responsible for the tariffs. People on both sides. Let me rephrase that. People who support him know that the tariffs are going to be painful. People like you are clueless and just are going to blame him for whatever happens. You don't understand the economics at play. You don't understand the concept of industrialization or hollowed out industrialization. You don't understand the concept of long-term profitability. You only understand whatever the box tells you. And the box tells you that just keep on going through the status quo. The status quo is working flawlessly. If we just keep riding the slope down, eventually we'll crash into the ground and we'll all die. Isn't that wonderful?
so we're going forward. We will be able to take in more money and
Thousands
sending them.
of companies sued.
They were sending things, bags, major sleaze bags, but I know them. And they're foreign
Thousands
country
of companies sued.
centric.
Thousands of
Thousands of companies sued, and thousands of companies were selling off the potential victory assets from the lawsuit, meaning their legal teams were telling them they couldn't win.
companies
clear.
sued.
They were sending things into our country, and the people knew full well things into our country. The country.
Costco is sending things into our country. They're the ones that sue. Like everyone sued, bro.
No, Costco is not sending things into our country. Costco is importing things into our country. China is sending things into our country. Other nations are sending things into our country. That is not bad in and of itself. But again, back to the chart. If more things are being sent into your country than being sent out of your country, your currency does this little worm dance where it falls onto the ground and dies. If you are exporting more goods out of your country than you are importing, your economy does this cool little zigzag where it climbs up. We want to do the climbing thing and not the falling on the ground and dying thing. Hope that helped.
Every major company is sued over this, dude. Dude, what's crazy is, so if you put new global tariffs through different statutes, we still have to refund the IEPA ones. It's just such.
That is not correct. If the total tariff remains the same based on historical precedent, the company is entitled to no recompense. Only if the national tariff against that country is reduced, then they are entitled to the difference.
Chaos, dude. If you're somebody trying to do business in America,
Which is exactly why they did it in this way without stopping him from reinstating the tariffs. Because if hundreds of billions of dollars were siphoned back out of the system and given to random firms, then too many poors would get the money. Too many random gamblers that just say, I'll go pitch in to buy some of this tariff debt. And then, it's just if everyone has money, no one has money. If everyone can afford a mega yacht, the price of the mega yacht just goes up because everyone's competing with each other to buy it. And the elite really like being the only ones who have money. So they're going to selectively block a couple different nations' tariffs to ensure that they remain lower, and then they get to harness that difference because they've already bought it. It's really straightforward. This isn't even a new system. It's been used before. People have been prosecuted for using this type of abuse before. Not in the US, but in other countries.
That has to import anything from other countries. It's just the past year has been nonstop. Oh, this tariff's up, it's down. This tariff's up, it's down. Oh, there's a loophole. Oh, there's not.
And that's why the goal is for you to not import those things and produce them locally. Import the raw materials, which are very low tariff, and then use those to produce the goods locally. But then you would actually have to pay Americans to do the job. And you don't like paying Americans. You like paying slaves in another country. Well, technically paying their masters. That's what you prefer. Now, the problem is, everyone else prefers having a functional economy. They don't like competing with slaves to buy food because it's really hard to compete with someone that will give every cent they have for a loaf of bread at the supermarket. The loaf of bread gets pretty expensive. You like to have standards. We like to have cheap bread. Bread that we can go in and give a little bit of money and get our nice loaf of garbage bread. Someone who's starving to death, they really don't care. People who have nothing do not care about quality. They do not care about pricing. They will give whatever it takes to survive. That is why a developing nation is willing to work hard as hell for no money. Now, we are going to experience that ourselves because we've done it to ourselves. We technically didn't do it ourselves. The state did it to us. But, nonetheless.
Oh, it's passed? Oh, I get a refund? Oh, but I have something to do. It's fucking crazy. No one can plan or do business here. No one can choose to build a factory. No one can. It's such a pain in the ass. What you need is stability. That's how you get long-term outperformance and growth. You need stability.
Stability,
stable,
everyone.
Understandable, clear rule of law.
Stability, everyone. Observe the power of stability. A stable decline. 0% tariffs throughout most of this period of time. Massive amounts of importing. Very little exporting. Massive deficits in trade. Massive national deficits. I hope you liked the idea of owning a house because it's always going to just be an idea. For most Americans, you will never be able to afford it. Have fun with that. Stability, guys.
And you need a fucking non-chaotic administration.
Yesterday I was at a steel plant, as you know, and went to
I was going to use this bit,
great plant.
but I decided against it. It's a pretty good little chunk, but yeah.
Great, wonderful people. And they were telling me, I said to them,
Sir?
you were there, a lot of the press in
Is it
this room.
sir?
Of course, I don't think this plane's big enough to take the press in this room, but a lot of the press right here, we're in Georgia. And I said to the owner, I made a speech at a factory. They make steel products. And I said, how are you? Nice to meet you. How's business? President, I'd love to kiss you. This is a very powerful man. I don't want to be kissed by that man.
I was going to use specifically that segment. I'm sure you can see where that slots into the meme, but I decided against it. It was too lowbrow for my taste, and I have very low standards. But also, I couldn't find the clip. I'm gonna be honest. I knew that he said it because I remembered it from when I watched the actual interview, but it had watermarks all over it in all of the uploads, and people had edited it, and I needed the raw one so that I could actually do the green screen thing, and yeah.
Powerful, strong man. He's been in the. I want to kiss you. Is it? Very fair question. Billions of dollars, not millions, hundreds of billions. Wouldn't you? I guess it has to get litigated for the next 2 years. So they write this
It's probably a fair point by him. And this is just another, I mean, it's his fault to begin with why we're in this situation, but it is just more chaos. I do think the refunds thing is so chaotic. Like it just goes. And Amy Comey Barrett did say, it's fucked. I mean, it's a bad look. It's just
companies that file for them.
I just yes, we'll end up being in court for the next 5 years.
President, you've used
We took care of farmers. You know, the farmers were
Alright, I figure this is going to be the end of the content. So I will close out by one final explanation. So, as I said before, throughout the 1800s, stable currency. What happened in 1910, I believe it's 1910, again, speaking from the cuff here, income tax was federalized permanently as a power of the federal government. Income tax replaced tariffs. For the large majority, most of the money came from income tax. And here's a little chart of how that works. I'm going to do an actual video on this later, that's why I have this chart, but it's pretty straightforward. If you produce goods, first party, you're the one that takes the goods and makes them from nothing. You get 60 to 80% of the value of your labor. And by that I mean, like, the product value after you pay your income tax, that's what you're left with. So, and that's including raising the value of your product. And again, this is the first stage of the cycle. The next cycle, you have to move your product where everything goes. So we're going to just say truckers. The truckers, for the value they're hauling in their truck, they only get 72 to 42% of that value. And the distributors get 27 to 61% of the value of what they're selling. Because every single person's having to put money into the pot. Every time a product moves and money is made, more money in the pot. Every time something is bought, more money in the pot. So you, the consumer, and everyone is a consumer at the end of the day. Like, it doesn't matter where you fall in this chain, you eventually have to spend your money, unless you're just super rich. And then you still are the consumer, but you consume a tiny portion of the money you just stash away. But if you are the consumer, which everyone is, this is the most generous version of this cycle. You make 13 to 17% of the value of your labor. This isn't because your boss screws you. It's because everyone screws everyone collectively because they're all being butt-fucked by the government. It's really that simple. The government is screwing him, so he's going to raise the price for this guy. This guy has to make up the difference because he's buying goods. Well, I mean, we're assuming in this case the trucker is actually buying goods or hauling on behalf of. It doesn't really matter how it's coming through. He's going to have to pay this guy more money to haul goods. And this guy is going to have... Well, no, other way around. Sorry, my bad. So he's going to have to charge more value for the goods in general. This guy is going to need more money to buy the goods from the distributor because he's working to buy things. He is still the consumer. So he's going to have to charge more money to offset that cost and value. The distributor is still going to be a consumer who wants to buy goods, and it's going to be operated by consumers. You know, just low-level employees who all have to be paid. And they all need to be paid extra so they can afford to buy the goods that they're selling. So all of this comes back over here. And now they have less money. You are going to have to, one, pay when you make money, and you're going to have to pay the prices that everyone else hiked up because they're all trying to recoup the money that's going to the government. The government just keeps getting infinite money every time this cycle spins. These values are modular. So the first time around, you lose basically at current today rates. We'll just simplify it, and you lose 20% of the total value of the economy. Now, this value is that 20%. And it's going to redo the whole thing. And now it's 4%. And it's going to redo the whole thing. And now it's... What even is it? 0.16%. And as you can see, it rapidly collapses. And this is with modern tax rates, which are very high, and as you can see in the other grid, they're not working too well. This system in itself is unsustainable. All of the money goes to the government. The government is inefficient at best, corrupt at worst, and it just consumes massive chunks of that money. And the only reason this system does not collapse in like 3 cycles is because the government does subsidize different areas to keep the system going. If the truckers are just unable to be paid more and haul the goods while everyone else is making money, it's okay. The government will use some of the money it stole from everyone to pay the truckers a little extra money to help them repair their vehicles, to do whatever is needed to keep them working. And then they'll stop subsidizing them. And then if it's like, oh, well, General Motors, the distributor, is going to fail. So we're just going to go ahead and subsidize them and give them a lot of money, and then they won't fail. Oh, well, the farmers are really struggling. We're just going to subsidize them, give them a little bit of money. So the government takes all this money and gives back just enough to keep the cycle from fully collapsing, ensuring that this happens. And during all of this, all of our representatives are getting extremely wealthy on public salaries that do not explain their wealth. It's almost like the companies that are benefiting from this, that's the other thing, companies also benefit because that whole subsidy thing, sometimes it's like, well, we need to help the farmers. And then other times it's like, well, we should help Disney. Disney just needs a couple $1 billion. They're really vital to our consumption of bad media. We could fix roads, but nah. Disney needs money. We need some transgender frog research on the other side of the planet. You know, like, what happens when you cut off a frog's reproductive organs? We could do it locally much cheaper, but honestly, if we do it in the Philippines, it's just the frogs will be more comfortable. The typical government bullshit. The income tax is the source of this decline. Tariffs are the solution because we could, in effect, return to a tariff-based federal government. Now, the federal government will never let that happen, but we could return to a tariff-based federal government, and then we would at least have a sustainable currency. Our currency would fluctuate. It would not recover from that change alone, but it would fluctuate up and down rather than just trending straight down. The state spending would have to be reined in. Money printing would ideally stop, and now it wouldn't stop because it's our government. They learned that they can print infinite money to buy whatever they want, and they're going to print infinite money to buy whatever they want. Which is funny because, again, they cash in anytime money changes hands. The federal government gets paid. They have more money than any other person, any other individual in the system by natural default. They will always have more money than the richest person in the country. And yet, they still don't have enough money. They still have to print more. The system is insane. I'll do a full video on this eventually. But for now, I'm going to leave you with that. The tariffs are going to be painful. The tariffs ensure that you have a future. You have to work for a future. You have to actually try. You have to struggle. It's unfortunate. It'd be great if we didn't have to do that and then we would just be assured a future because, I don't know, reality decided we deserved one. Unfortunately, that is not the case. This is an emergency. This is something that cannot be sustained. Everyone talks about how we're in a recession. We're in a recession. Wow, we're in a recession. When have we not been in a recession? For your entire life, we've been in a recession. It just hasn't been noticeable that you would actually talk about it. They're able to distract you with bullshit, to distract you with worthless garbage that you waste your money on, because you can't actually buy healthy food, because you actually can't travel. Buy some video games because you can't travel. It's not, and again, this is an attack on video games. I like gaming, but gaming is 100% a replacement for other forms of more expensive activities. It's that simple. Everything you consume is a replacement for something better that you can no longer afford. Maybe. I mean, you might have really low standards and you just enjoy the garbage that you eat and the garbage that you consume. Like, that's up to you. But for most people, everything is a value judgment. Everything is a, well, I can't get this, but I can get this, and this is good enough. That's what you get with the stability of the current status quo. No one should want it to continue. Well, I mean, the people getting rich off of it want it to continue, but none of us, the people, should want it to continue if you actually understand what's happening. With that, later.